Episode 5. Planets. Huge balls of gas turning slowly in space. They look back and see us doing the same. Minds suspended by their own gravity, slowly turning until they stop. Others locked in their orbits. Solar systems and constellations of people living below that sky. We see ourselves and name them after gods. We hold up the sky together. Birdman. Birdman is made of questions. All the animals of the woodland whisper them to each other, deep into the nights that seem to stretch out around them in every direction, reaching out towards distant horizons. How did Birdman rise to power? Asked the owl to herself, soaring upon the wind, the world rushing past her as she hovers statically, the centre of her own universe. Without a kingdom to rule over, or a power structure from which to emerge, nothing but the messy, gentle world everywhere. She sometimes spots him with her keen eyes, down amongst the deep shadows cast by the bones of trees. He never looks up. As the fox lies coiled into a nook he fashioned to meet the shape of his body beneath the grass, his thoughts turn towards the Birdman too. Who will attempt to end his reign? He asks his tiny cubs, piled atop one another like a pile of raked autumn leaves. He realises that from their perspective, his words are nothing more than the car engine that passes quietly by your bedroom window shortly before you roll over into the warm, soft embrace of sleep. Someone else out there in the world, places to go, people to see. It's comforting somehow, while you have nothing more important to do than to fold into yourself. They go on without you there. The details are unimportant and merely incidental. They know so little of the world, their minds stray no further than the cosy confines of wet earth around them in their hole. They have so far to go, and so much to learn, much like the fox himself. He realises then that none of us truly know nearly as much as we assume we do. Perhaps the world can be small sometimes, and with that, he was asleep. Birdman was not. The snake slithered out from beneath the pile of twigs that marked the passing of the seasons and the steadfast effort of the plants to reach a sky that never seemed to get any closer. This litter of broken chances had become the home of someone new. How will Birdman survive in this economy? Wondered this snake as she awoke for the night, a steady energy growing in her. It was time to hunt. She knew all too well the economy of life and death in this maze of leaves, moss and rocks. You were either the killer or the killed, she knew. Her entire life balanced shakily on this initial premise. The world of space and height above her never once permeated her peripheral leanings. The world for her was two-dimensional and full of opportunities to continue or be ended once and for all. She could not understand the lofty world of the Birdman over her head. She didn't want to know. Birdman wanted to understand hers. Far above the foxes in their den, lost to safe slumber. Over the snake slithering across the forest floor, filled with a single purpose within the tight confines of her philosophy. Beneath the gliding owl, looking over them all, and seeing a sprawling majesty with no order or purpose. What is his true identity? Asked the Birdman. He stands on a perch in an oak tree, staring down at himself reflected back up to him in the black water of a shallow pool. He sees the stars behind him in the depths, the contrast of close and far so distinct, it hits him between the eyes with an existential stab. He has lived his whole life with himself, heard all the questions from all over the forest, never ending. And yet, he does not know, not really, who the Birdman is. He looks out from within, wondering if looking out the eyes is really the perch with the best view to judge. He thinks of the others in all directions around him, each of them asking but finding only their own answers that can never be his. A leaf detaches on the breeze and drifts down through the still air, landing in a pool and disturbing its surface. His image becomes murky and indistinct. His eyes turn up towards the sky. He sees the owl and meets her eyes. She starts in surprise and wheels around to head home to her hatchlings. He looks past her into the deep well of eternity stretching out above the forest. No longer reflected, but real and vibrant before him. He understands. His crown is not one of conquest. His enemies, not of revolution. His economic survival, not a question of exchange. His identity, not one of concealed truth. He is simply himself. Birdman. Nothing more and nothing less. And perhaps, at least for now, when the night is still and the animals questioning, perhaps it is enough. And if something were to be looking back from the distant edge of that vast and empty tunnel overhead, perhaps it would agree. Oblivion. Jack shivered as he stepped out onto the deck, his bare feet chilled by the film of rain on the wooden planks. The icy north wind made his jet black hair dance, and the taste of salt stung his lips. The music, light and laughter, grew quieter with each step he took towards the bow. The rain pelted his face relentlessly, as forks of lightning shattered the night sky. The waves pounded against the hull of the ship again and again and again. The rail grew ever closer, as if encouraging him. Jack knew the end was drawing close. His life had spiraled out of control, caught in a trap of chaos and misery. The cruise of a lifetime, he whispered to himself, and smiled. Thunder roared as Jack reached his destination, as if in anticipation of the climax. Jack smoothly jumped the rail and swung precariously over the front of the ship. He heard a man shout something he couldn't quite make out through the wind and rain. He turned to see a middle-aged man in uniform running towards him. He was offering help and advice, but Jack had heard it all before. They said he was incurable. Jack simply smiled at him and toppled backwards into emptiness. He took a deep breath of cool night air as he fell. He didn't know why. It would just make it take longer. He dropped, weightless. It seemed to take an age. Memories and choices flashed before his eyes. Finally, he hit the surface and sunk deep into the dark, silent water. His limbs felt heavy. His eyelids shut. It was the end of a long, hard life. Peace at last, he thought. But then instinct took hold and panic set in. He needed to breathe. He struggled, reaching for the surface and the air he needed. Doubts began to cross his mind. What if he didn't need to die? But then acceptance returned, and he began to sink down again into the depths. As the last of his breaths disappeared, the orbs of precious air escaped from his lips. A light suddenly shone out from the darkness, blinding yet welcoming. As it surrounded and consumed him, He knew he'd finally reached what he'd craved for so long. Oblivion. The animals watch them pass. They move with a bubble of silence, all quieted for a moment. Mammals, birds and insects alike, simply stop and watch them pass as they overlap with them. A trail behind them of slight change. They move through the world and leave it a little different from how they found it. Like all of us. They are not like us. People near them don't notice them, they look past. People far away feel a presence, as incontrovertible as a mountain, on the move. The world moves past them as they walk. Your part of the world slides steadily in their direction. Feel it move now.